Hello and welcome to People and Profit. I'm Charles Pellegrin, and this episode we wonder what several rounds of talks between Iran and the United States under Donald Trump could mean for Iran's economy. The country has gone through what's been described as a lost decade of economic growth, coupled with high inflation. Iran's GDP has stagnated, generating just over $400 billion of activity in 2015 and about the same in 2023. That's just over a third of the economic output of regional rivals Turkey and Saudi Arabia that same year. Well, to help us understand if these talks between Tehran and Washington could realistically change this situation, we'll speak with Professor Vali Nasr. He is Professor of International Affairs and Middle East Studies at Johns Hopkins University's School of Advanced International Studies and the author of Iran's Grand Strategy, A Political History at Princeton University Press. Professor Nasr, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you for having me.
I want to begin with sanctions. The country's been under a sanctions regime of some sort for more than 40 years. Give us a sense of how badly they've hobbled the economy and Iran's development.
Well, sanctions are the most important feature of Iran's economy. It's a regulatory mechanism imposed from the outside that limits trade and skews the working of markets. Of course, Iran's state has its own inefficiencies, much like many other big countries of the developing South. But sanctions have become a way in which Iran's economy is limited, it's skewed, and the relationships with suppliers, producers, finances, everything is impacted by it. And as you mentioned, there's been sanctions for 40 years, but particularly since 2018, when the United States left the nuclear deal at that time, it imposed maximum pressure sanctions on Iran, which means that choking off Iran's economy and trying to isolate it from the international economic system. And that period has aggravated the situation even more.
When the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, was signed in 2015, there was this hope that it would lead to more foreign direct investment in the country. But that really didn't quite materialize in the few years that the agreement was actually in effect. So if, and it's a huge if, negotiations with this U.S. administration over Iran's nuclear program succeed and some sanctions are potentially lifted, even partly, what effect do you think this could have on the economy of Iran?
Well, the most immediate effect is if Iran can sell more oil and trade with its neighbors, Iraq, Turkey, the Gulf countries, more money will come into the economy. That would alleviate a lot of shortages, generate employment, reduce inflation. It would also give the government ability to invest in infrastructure. Iran now has electricity and water shortages, and varieties of its infrastructure needs upgrading. So that's the most immediate impact. But in the longer term, Iran needs direct foreign investment to generate jobs, to boost its domestic business scene. Iranian businessmen are very keen on direct foreign investment. That is going to take time because it also requires a change in Iranian laws, in the structure of joint venture partnerships, and varieties of things that the country has to do in order to accommodate direct foreign investment. Right now, there is no incentive to do it, because direct foreign investment is prevented from coming to Iran. But if direct foreign investment is on the table, then the pressure would be on Iran to change itself.
Before we even start talking about what effect lifting these sanctions could have, the real question here is, do you actually believe these talks can actually lead anywhere? The latest signals aren't very good, with the Supreme Leader rejecting any proposal from the U.S. that demands a full dismantling of its nuclear program. And this is a program that is, weeks, even days from being able to produce a nuclear weapon.
The talks are at an impasse. I think both countries, both the United States and Iran, want a deal, and that's probably the most important issue here, that both actually want to get to yes. However, the United States has changed its position back and forth between agreeing to Iran having minimal enrichment under international oversight which is something Iran is allowed to do as a signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and then periodically and most recently saying that Iran should completely surrender its nuclear program. A complete surrender is not going to work because it essentially it's no longer a deal. It's basically demand for Iran to hand over its nuclear program altogether. And the United States would have to give Iran a lot upfront economic benefit unconditionally to get that concession from Iran. So my expectation is that perhaps the two will have to find a way to get around this disagreement over how much enrichment Iran could have in order to get to a deal.
Let's focus on one particular issue that's hindering the country's economy. Long-standing problems with power outages are currently coming to the fore and taking their toll on residents and businesses alike, a situation that could get even worse as summer temperatures lead to even higher demand. Our reporter in Tehran, Saeed Azimi, tells us more on how aging infrastructure and poor management have led to this dire situation. Take a look.
In Tehran, the lights could go out at any moment during the day, deeply affecting how people live and how businesses operate. Nasr runs this bakery, which makes sangak flatbread, an Iranian delicacy, and these daily disruptions are leading to steep financial losses.
I lose about 200 loaves of bread each time.
To make ends meet, Nasr has also decided to sell coffee and masala tea. What has made the recent outages especially difficult is their unpredictability.
Sometimes it's from 3 to 5, sometimes from 5 to 7, we never know.
The oven he uses to bake toftun bread has shut down, and he has had to invest in a gasoline-powered generator. Mehdi Arabsadeh is an expert on energy diplomacy, and he believes power outages could be a key factor in the country's economic crisis, and it could undermine investment security. He also blames poor management.
Over $70 billion annually is spent on energy subsidies in a completely aimless manner, hindering infrastructure development.
The expert also points the finger at the sanctions imposed by the United States.
Unfair sanctions by the US have prevented the development of new power plants, and poor management has been particularly impactful, especially during the previous administration.
As Iran grapples with these persistent outages, calls grow louder for reform, better planning, and investment in sustainable energy solutions.
The frequent blackouts are not just a minor inconvenience, but a symptom of deeper systemic issues. These outages have led to widespread anger amongst the people as they cannot live or plan their ordinary lives during summer.
Saeed Azimi reporting there from Tehran. Professor Nasr, there's been a conversation about these power cuts in Iran and the fact that they are disproportionately affecting poorer neighborhoods. What does that tell us?
Well, the power outages reflect the fact that sanctions, maximum pressure sanctions have really impacted the capabilities of Iran's economy. Your reporter is correct. There's mismanagement. And much like you might have in other countries that have grappled with energy shortages. But in the case of Iran, the inability to invest in infrastructure, to upgrade the systems, to get modern technology, to provide electricity is becoming a major issue. Now, the same thing is also happening with water. It's also happening with natural gas deliveries, with the performance of Iran's refineries. And therefore, Iran's economy as a whole is in a situation of crisis. Now, this impacts the people who are most dependent on government provision of these services, which is the poor people. The wealthy people can have their own generators, have better access, can buy a lot of these facilities on open market. But the people who depend on government services are most directly impacted. And that's the point about the sanctions. The sanctions have not really impacted Iran's foreign policy behavior in the region, nuclear program, etc. It really is impoverishing the Iranian people and making their lives much more difficult. But at the same time, I think the Iranian leaders understand that the only way to address this popular unhappiness domestically is to actually get to a deal with the United States.
And what do you think about proposals made by Iranian officials for U.S. companies to invest in Iran's energy sector, including in civilian nuclear energy?
I think these are serious. Even last time around, for instance, the French company Total started investing in Iran's natural gas. It was forced to leave Iran after the United States left the deal. I think the Iranians understand that one of the problems with the previous deal and why President Trump left the deal so easily was that the American companies were not deeply invested in Iran, that it is not enough for Iran to sell more oil. It needs foreign businesses to be present in Iran and to be an advocate for gradual normalization of relations between Iran and the West. And also the kind of technology and investment that Iran needs is present in the West. And so a nuclear deal is not just to avert a war with Israel, is not just to sell more oil. It has to actually meaningfully bring foreign investment to Iran. Without that, the impact of the deal would not be what Iran is looking for.
And finally, in your book, Iran's Grand Strategy, you argue, and I hope I get this correctly or I characterize this correctly, that Iranian leaders' anti-Americanism serves the regime's national security interests and not the other way around. This anti-Americanism has taken a severe toll, as we said, on Iranians because it's what has led to this long-standing sanctions and isolation. Do you see the regime being able to change tack? Is that what we're seeing today?
Well, the anti-Americanism is ingrained in the thinking of Iran's leaders because they view the United States as the primary security threat to Iran. And everything about Iran's behavior in the region vis-a-vis the United States is built around protecting the regime and Iran from what they see as bad American influence. But this does not mean that there's no flexibility or willingness to work with the United States to a certain extent. And that was what was the case when they signed the first nuclear deal. It is also what we saw with China. When China first opened up to the United States, it didn't give up on its anti-imperialism and worries about the West. It just thought that it needed to make a strategic shift, at least for a period, to deal with the Soviet threat. But gradually, those shifts amount to a big change in a regime. Iran's not going to go from what it is to a liberal democracy or a friend of the West overnight. It has to happen gradually. And the nuclear deal and gradual economic engagement between Iranian businesses and the West, Iranian people and the global economy, much like it happened in China, is the path through which this regime would gradually change.
That parallel with China, very interesting. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Professor Vali Nasr, thank you so much for speaking with us. As a reminder, you're a professor at Johns Hopkins University and the author of Iran's Grand Strategy, A Political History.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Do stay tuned to France 24 for the latest developments in that relationship between Iran and the U.S., which is always making headlines. And you can also subscribe to People in Profit on the podcast platform of your choice to listen to all of our previous episodes. Bye-bye for now.